let's talk about comforting and supporting. In a whole range of situations, from minimal situations such as an awkward silence to very intense ones such as someone being fired, people are going to have emotional reactions, and it's up to you to withstand their lashing out until they come back from emotion to logic. Let's take a look at how this process works.
Knowing how to properly support and comfort others is important. There will be two main types of situations where this skill is needed. First is comforting someone in terms of minor situations. This happens very frequently and often. We're talking about whether someone is uncomfortable and you choose the conversation topic that makes them the most comfortable, to start a conversation when someone is bored, to keep them company after they hear an unpleasant comment, or to suggest a change when they're actually physically uncomfortable, sitting in a weird position. Then you have the major situations, when someone has been humiliated in public, when they were told they're not getting that promotion, they have a serious personal or workplace issue, or others, being able to make them feel safe and support them properly. In terms of severe situations, there is one thing that this has in common with aggressive people, which is that they will have high amygdala activation, or in other words, they're very emotional. The only difference is that when people are feeling unsafe or mourning for something, usually they take the avoidance route instead of the aggressive route. But in fact, they can also take this one as well, which further complicates things for somebody trying to help them. So all techniques that you use should help them lower their amygdala activation here. Some of them are in common with conflict resolution, like showing respect and empathy, which can work. But for these cases in specific, there are usually two main techniques. The first is to label their emotions, saying something like, "I know you must be feeling stressed," or "I know you must feel sad due to this." Labeling emotions helps the person make them logical and reduces the intensity of the actual emotion. It's a great tactic to use. You'll help decrease the intensity of that emotion by them acknowledging it, and then they become more reasonable. After that, it's increasing trust by the person. What I mean by this is, when the person trusts you, they feel safer. Therefore, the best person to help someone feel comfortable or safe is the person that they trust the most. And this also means that whatever you can do to increase trust and connection with a person will make your words have more weight, and they will let you disarm their emotions more easily. Also important to mention is the fact that in the recovery process, some people can lash out. And especially if they are close to you, they may lash out at you in specific and blame you in a personal way. This doesn't mean that you did anything wrong, it's just the person displacing their emotional outburst, but it sure feels personal. So, when supporting and comforting others, one of the keys is to be able to take the hits, to take the few bites, and understand that this is not personal. Just as we discussed in conflict, they are usually going to take one of two stances, hot or cold conflicts. Either they'll completely shut down, become cold, avoid reality altogether, or they are going to become too violent, aggressive, or even abusive. And you need to be able to deal with both. In more detail, they can do things such as, number one, just avoiding the issue, running away from it at full speed and not wanting to face it, or even becoming delusional and not seeing reality. Also, they can simply go cold. They can feel a lot of emotions and have opinions on the issue, but simply not reveal them. They switch their emotions off so that they don't feel the pain of the situation. A third option is fake agreeing. They can pretend to agree with you and just lie to your face to get it out of the way and go back to self-pity. Or they may have some future plans, including possible revenge, that they're not sharing with you. And finally, we have good old aggression, blaming you, insulting you, shirking responsibility, and shifting it on you, among other possibilities. What are some implementation pointers in terms of comforting and supporting? First, the focus is to help the person regain function. The biggest goal when someone is in crisis mode is to help them become functional again. It's not just about removing emotion, it's about removing emotion and clearing the way for them to be able to function again. Coping mechanisms are key here. In crisis management also, solving a crisis is precisely about making sure that this person has good enough coping mechanisms to help them keep their mental health. What I mean is that their old coping mechanisms may not be enough to deal with this new issue. Of course, it's a sensitive issue to ask how a colleague is going to deal with something, but do it. Try and ask what coping mechanisms they do have, whether they are enough, and even suggest some new ones. Gestures may work. Some people feel supported by conversation and a helping hand, but other people can feel supported by a gift, even if symbolic, either a personal one or by their team or a group of friends. And finally, be fair. If people see you comforting a colleague but not another one when they are in similar situations, they'll know that you are being partial, and that is a massive red flag. What are some do's and don'ts in terms of comforting and supporting someone? Do's. Do focus on safety. This means don't let the person feel judged or attacked. Be as open as possible to facilitate their recovery. One sniff of a judgmental attitude and the person can retreat right back to the bottom. Don'ts. Don't rush it. Nobody has a recovery schedule. Some people can bounce back quickly, but others may take time. Trying to rush someone into recovering in a specific timeline can backfire and make it worse. What are some examples of comforting and supporting? The first example is absorbing someone's aggression. Maybe you give someone some very bad news, such as them being fired, and they take it out on you. Stay objective and weather the hits. They're just lashing out until they calm down. The second example is absorbing grief. Maybe someone lost someone or something important, and you need to comfort them until they get back up on their feet. And finally, another example is bridging avoidance. When someone is withdrawing, you need to keep politely insisting, or maybe give them some time and then circle back, always supporting them until they recover. What are our key takeaways here? The first is that, just like with conflict itself, there are multiple reactions that people may have when they need support. Also hot and cold, and very similar to the types that we've already covered. In order to comfort them, you must persist. The second is that using labeling and increasing trust does help. All emotion comes from the amygdala, so any technique that decreases amygdala activation brings people back to the realm of logic. Labeling their emotions and obtaining more trust from them are just two examples. And finally, expect to take a few hits. When you're trying to comfort someone who has very intense emotions, it's possible that they will lash out at you. It's not personal, it's just collateral damage. And you have to go through this in order to help them recover.
So as you see, there are a couple of techniques that you can use to really comfort people and support them, but always be aware that someone that needs help is going to be lashing out until they really come back down from emotion to logic. And you really have to withstand that process.